12 sinister ghost legends exposed, spine-chilling Florida hauntings still cursed today. Jenna felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders as she pushed her shopping cart through the familiar aisles of the local grocery store, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry hornets. Her heart hammered in her chest, racing with the unbearable anxiety of not knowing where her husband had gone. Every glance over her shoulder sent a shiver down her spine. The ordinary life she led in her quiet suburban Orlando neighborhood had grown dark and sinister. Whispers of a family curse passed down through generations echoed in her mind. Horrifying tales her grandmother once recounted before bedtime. Tales now relived in her waking nightmare. As she laid out the groceries on the kitchen table, Jenna noticed her daughter's doll positioned just slightly differently from how she left it. The eyes of that lifeless plastic grin seemed to bore into her soul, and a chill raced through her. She shook her head, blaming the stress. Exhaustion weighed on her like a boulder. But the feeling of being watched persisted, an unseen force lingering in the corners of her home. Night fell, darkness creeping into every nook. Muffled whispers arose from the walls, wrapping around her like a spider's web. She knew she couldn't ignore it anymore. One particularly restless night, shadowy figures danced on the edges of her vision, flickering in and out, just out of reach. Jenna pressed her palms against her ears, willing the voices away, but they only grew louder. Desperation gnawed at her insides as she fought to keep a semblance of normalcy for her children. Deciding to take a late-night drive for clarity, Jenna slipped behind the wheel. The streets were impossibly quiet, each house a darkened shell. As the streetlights cast flickering shadows like twisted specters, a figure materialized at the road's edge. Pale, translucent. It beckoned her to stop. Panic took root in her heart as she pressed the brakes, the tires screeching against the asphalt. Who or what was standing before her? "You shouldn't be here," it rasped, its voice like gravel scraping against stone. Fear wrapped around her throat like a vice. She couldn't breathe. Trembling, she turned the car around. When she finally returned home, her children were wide-eyed, trembling with excitement. "Mommy, our new friend!" They pointed to the corner of the room where a shadow loomed, flickering like a candle flame. Jenna's skin crawled. "Who?" she choked out, realizing their innocent smiles were tinted with fear. "I'll find out the truth," she whispered to herself, searching for clues about her husband's disappearance. What she discovered connected him to a local sheriff with a disturbing history steeped in unsolved cases, echoing whispers of violence and dread. The friendly faces around her morphed into a mask of hostility, their affable greetings now dripping with suspicion. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As fear sunk in, the community that once felt secure now morphed into a twisted maze of hidden truths and malevolent spirits lurking in the shadows. Shadows no longer stayed contained. They whispered secrets, urging her to dig deeper. Each minute ticked by like a countdown to disaster. In her quest for answers, Jenna felt the darkness closing in, as the spectral and human threats melded into one terrifying reality. Just as the clock struck midnight, a chilling wind swept through her home, snuffing out the lights and plunging everything into darkness. A heavy breath echoed through the stillness, and Jenna gripped her children's hands tighter, heart racing. Was it the lingering whispers from before, or something worse lurking in the void? As she fumbled for her phone, the shadows pressed closer, and uncertainty pierced the silence like a knife, leaving her breathless, wondering if she'd just invited the end through her search for the truth. Jenna's grip tightened on her children's hands as the darkness pressed in. The sensation of being watched escalated, the shadows swirling around her like a whirlpool drawing her into the abyss. A low, frigid whisper slithered between the walls. "Find him or lose them." Heart pounding, Jenna stumbled back, pulling her children behind her. She could barely see their faces, just two small shadows, but she felt their terror radiating through her skin. She needed answers, but in this heavy darkness, all she could feel was the pulse of despair. "Mommy, the new friend is scared," her youngest whimpered, eyes darting to the flickering dark corner of the room. She forced herself to breathe, aware of the suffocating dread threatening to overtake her. "I'll protect you," she promised, though her words felt empty against the weight of the night. Scrambling for the light switch, she flicked it desperately, but nothing happened. The light refused to comply, plunging them deeper into night. The atmosphere grew thicker, heavy with a palpable tension that made her skin prickle. A low groan emanated from the walls, vibrating through the floorboards and into her bones. Jenna wrapped her arms around her children, her heart racing. "Stay here. I'll check the kitchen," she said, trying to sound brave, but terror wrapped around her like a shroud. As she edged toward the doorway, a flicker caught her eye. It was the television, somehow blaring to life in the stillness, showcasing static-filled images of old news broadcasts, missing person reports, unsolved murders, and whispers of the curse that haunted Orlando. The anchor spoke, his voice garbled, but Jenna's stomach twisted as she recognized one face: her husband. His eyes glinted with despair on the screen before it scrambled into chaos. "No!" she shouted, the fear spilling from her lips. Losing him felt real, palpable. Behind her, she heard a giggle, light as a feather, yet sharp enough to cut through the darkness. Jenna spun around to see the shadow of her daughter's doll standing in the corner, somehow taller, somehow more sinister. It seemed the figure of the imagined friend had stretched and morphed into something grotesque. "Mommy!" Her child's small voice broke the vibrating tension. But Jenna's eyes were glued to the doll, its smile stretching wider, revealing teeth that were not plastic, but jagged and raw. A gust of wind howled through the room, slamming the door shut with a resounding boom. The temperature plummeted, and the shadows crept nearer, writhing like hungry beasts. Jenna's breath quickened, a cold sweat trickling down her spine. Suddenly, the echoes of her grandmother's tales flooded back. The curses, the shadows buried deep in the roots of their family. Could it be real? What if her husband's fate was intertwined with these horrors? Was she cursed too? "We need to go," she hissed, grabbing her children's hands. They dashed towards the front door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged as the whispers grew louder, and the figure in the corner transformed, taking on a clearer shape, a more recognizable form. It began to coalesce, revealing a face, one that looked uncannily like her own. "What do you want?" Jenna cried, desperation clawing at her throat. The apparition raised a finger, pointing towards her family photos hanging on the wall. Images of her husband began to flicker, ages of happiness warped into screams of terror. "Unravel the truth," it whispered, voice echoing like a taunt, laced with an ancient despair. But the room felt like it was closing in. Darkness surged, and in that moment, Jenna felt a terrifying revelation dawn on her. The uncovering might unleash more than just secrets, and if she didn't act now, she could lose everything. As Jenna turned to face the shadow again, a new dread washed over her. Was it only her husband's truth she needed to uncover? Or had she been blind to the horrors hiding within her own family? The stakes grew sharper. She was running out of time. A choice hung in the air, thick with danger, her children's lives depending on it. Next time, Jenna breathed, determination rising like a raging fire inside her. I'll find the answers. But as she gathered herself for that leap into the unknown, the shadows shifted, and a fresh wave of fear enveloped the room, whispering warnings of what awaited her. Was she ready to face the darkness that lay underneath her own skin? The shadows pressed in tighter, almost suffocating, as Jenna fought against the sheer weight of her surroundings. Her heart raced erratically, a wild drum echoing the thumps against her chest. Gripping her children's hands even tighter, she allowed herself a quick glance back at the flickering television, but it dissolved into static, a blank feed that served only to amplify the encroaching dread. "Mommy, I don't like this game," her youngest whimpered again, and Jenna felt a pang of guilt. It wasn't a game, not anymore. "Stay close, just hold on to me," Jenna breathed, her voice barely a whisper against the growing chaos. The eyes, every shadow seemed alive, watching, waiting. She could still hear the distorted echo of her twin, an echo of a life she didn't recognize, or perhaps had never truly known at all. "Where is Daddy?" Her eldest, eyes wide with a mix of confusion and fear, looked up at her. Panic clawed at Jenna's throat, the question she had not dared to ask. Yet now it hung there, like a knife poised to drop. "Let's find him," Jenna forced out, summoning every last ounce of courage. But the chilling whisper slithered through her thoughts. Find him, or lose them. Would it ever end? She turned towards the kitchen, instinct guiding her, but each step felt like wading through molasses. The doll, a grinning abomination, stared unblinkingly, its smile spreading wider as if savoring her fear. She dared to step closer. Its gaze seemed almost alive, pulling her toward madness. Then, out of the corner of her eye, something darted. Jenna whipped around, heart plummeting into her stomach. A dark shadow slipped down the hallway, quick and fleeting. "Did you see that?" she breathed, gripping her children tighter. "I saw the new friend," her youngest exclaimed, voice bubbling with a mix of terror and excitement. "No," Jenna whispered, dread creeping up her spine. Not a new friend, something much worse. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, she propelled her family forward. They edged closer to the hallway, the shadows closing in with every passing second, draping the walls in a thick veil of darkness. Might as well be stepping towards a yawning chasm. What if her husband's disappearance was intertwined with this? What if the price of finding him meant losing herself? "They want something from us," she muttered, a sudden realization sparking inside her. If she could just understand what, perhaps she could navigate this labyrinth of despair. It felt like a high-stakes game of truth, one she wasn't sure she was ready to play. "Mommy, the new friend is here," her eldest pointed, fear clawing at the edge of her voice. At that moment, the air grew dense, a sharp chill weaving through the corridor, like a predator lurking in the night. Jenna squinted into the gloom, bracing herself for whatever awaited her. Shadows coalesced, forming a figure that mirrored her confusion, guilt, and despair. "Find us," the air echoed, the voice unsettlingly sweet and soft, yet steeped in an ancient bitterness. The walls shuddered, crying out in protest against the sound. "Who are you?" Jenna cried, heart racing as she stepped back. A calamity of emotions boiled over inside her. The figure tilted its head. The resemblance, it was uncanny. "You already know." It was as if a part of her echoed back, the reflection of her fears brought to life. Suddenly, the doll fell to the ground, shattering the stillness with a piercing laugh. Jenna's world unraveled further. The laughter morphed, growing louder, transforming into a symphony of chaos that resonated off the walls. "Mommy, what's happening?" Jenna's chest squeezed, panic flooding her veins. Her choices were narrowing, and the chilling realization struck. The answers lay behind the secrets of her own bloodline. But would she dare delve into that legacy? "Into the past we must go," the figure rasped, fading like mist, but not before it traced Jenna's features with a delicate finger, its chill leaving a mark of ice in its wake. Jenna stood frozen, entangled in despair, her children trembling beside her, naive to the storm brewing within. The way forward seemed blocked, veiled with promises of horrors she barely grasped. With one last look into the recesses of the shadowed hall, Jenna sensed a sinister truth slithering just beyond reach. What lived in the dark, and how would she confront the cursed legacy she had inherited? Now, every heartbeat echoed, a countdown to a choice she would have to make. As dread danced around her, ripping away the semblance of calm, one thing crystallized in her mind. She would have to learn the truth before the truth learned her. What horrors awaited her in that revelation? The darkness thickened like fog, seeping into every corner of the house, wrapping around Jenna and her children like a cold, suffocating blanket. Her breath quickened, her chest tight, as the chilling voice of the figure echoed in her mind. "Into the past we must go." What did that even mean? She glanced down at her kids, their tiny faces pale, eyes wide with terror. Their innocence was both a comfort and a burden. "Mommy, I'm scared," her youngest said, voice trembling, a tiny whisper that sent a fresh wave of dread coursing through Jenna's veins. "I know, sweetheart," she managed, forcing a brave smile. But inside, she felt like a marionette with strings being pulled, an empty vessel. She needed to lead them to safety, but how? Before she could gather her thoughts, the kitchen door creaked open, as if inviting them in. A dread-filled curiosity tugged at Jenna. What could be hiding in there? "Just stay close." They stepped into the kitchen, which somehow felt more sinister than the hallway. The air was stale, heavy with secrets. The flickering lights overhead cast erratic shadows that danced eerily on the walls. Was there something lurking behind the fridge? "What's that?" Jenna's eldest pointed, finger trembling. It was the doll again, its wooden body positioned upright on the counter, staring right at them. The smile twisted wider, as though mocking her. "Don't look at it! Keep moving!" Jenna snapped, instinctively pulling her children away. But as they turned to leave, the doll's laughter erupted, high-pitched and shrill, echoing against the tiled walls. "Mommy, I want to go home!" Jenna's heart raced, panic clawing at her throat. Home felt like a distant memory, a bygone safe haven. What lay beyond this kitchen? It was like the world had distorted, reshaped into a haunting maze where shadows became tangible entities. "Look!" Her eldest tugged her sleeve, eyes wide with something Jenna couldn't quite decipher. "The big door is open. Is that where Daddy is?" Hope flickered, nearly extinguished by the shadows swirling around them. Jenna swallowed hard, trying to quell the rising tide of despair. What if this door led to something worse, even worse than the doll? But what choice did she have? "All right, let's go," she said, steeling herself. Together, they approached the door, the weight of anticipation hanging heavy in the air. As they pushed it open, a gust of icy wind swept through, snuffing out the kitchen lights, enshrouding them in darkness. "Mommy!" the children shrieked. "Hold my hand, don't let go," Jenna cried, heart pounding in her ears. What seemed like an endless labyrinth lay before them, twisting and turning like a nightmare. Faded photographs hung on the walls, grim faces staring back, hollow eyes tracking their movements. Each step felt like stepping deeper into the abyss. A whisper brushed against Jenna's ear, sending ice down her spine. "We're waiting." "Who's waiting?" she demanded, voice breaking. The words hung in the air, heavy like a storm cloud ready to burst. Suddenly, the shadows congealed, forming a figure at the far end of the hallway. A grotesque mirror image of herself, face twisted in agony, arms outstretched in a plea for help. Jenna's breath hitched. "What do you want?" The figure grinned, an expression of malice. "You must choose to remain or to break the cycle." Her heart lurched. What cycle? But the figure only laughed, a haunting sound that seemed to vibrate with the very walls. It surged toward her, darkness spilling forth like a tidal wave. "Run!" Jenna shouted, pulling her kids with her as they darted for the nearest room. The presence surged, hot on their heels, mist curling at their feet, closing in with suffocating urgency. Before they could reach safety, the echoing laughter morphed back into that chilling, sweet voice. "The past will consume you if you let it." Jenna turned one last time, feeling the oppressive darkness close in. What did it want from her? What truth had she yet to face? "Mommy, please!" her eldest whimpered through tears, clutching her little brother. With every ounce of strength, Jenna gripped her children tighter. They couldn't falter. The stakes had never been higher. What would she uncover before the night was over? What sacrifice awaited them in the depths of the darkness? The weight of darkness pressed on Jenna as she pulled her children into the adjoining room. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing them into a murky silence that felt almost suffocating. A musty smell filled the air, and the only source of light was a flickering candle on a dusty table. Shadows danced along the walls like taunting specters swirling in an unseen wind. "Are we safe here, Mommy?" her youngest whimpered, burying his face against her leg. "For now," Jenna said, trying to keep her voice steady, though panic gnawed at her insides. She grabbed the candle, holding it high, illuminating the room. Old furniture loomed around them, scratched tables, rickety chairs, and a cracked mirror reflecting an image she struggled to understand. Her own face flickered back, but it seemed distorted, almost sinister, as though the mirror was mocking her. A soft thud came from the corner, causing Jenna to freeze. "What was that?" she asked, heart racing, scanning the room. "Maybe it's Daddy," her eldest cried, a hint of hope peeking through fear. "Stay close to me," Jenna whispered, stepping toward the sound. As they inched forward, a distinct creak echoed, like old wood settling, but it felt like something waiting for them, holding its breath. "Mommy!" her youngest pulled at her skirt, eyes wide. Before she could respond, a shadow flitted past the candle's glow. Jenna's stomach twisted. "Who's there?" she called, voice trembling but trying to sound firm. The shadow returned, this time coalescing into a long figure resembling a child, small, with wild hair and wide dark eyes. "Help me!" the child's voice croaked, a rasping sound that sent shivers down Jenna's spine. "No, stay back," she warned, instinctively stepping in front of her children. "Mommy, it's just a kid. What if he needs help?" her eldest protested, as if trying to bridge empathy with the danger they felt. "Stay by me," Jenna snapped, feeling the walls close in again. But the figure reached out, and a cold wind howled through the room, extinguishing the candle's flickering light and throwing them into complete darkness. The choking silence weighted heavily. You will never escape the past. It will always find you. Jenna stumbled back, panic surging as icy fingers seemed to invade the air around them. "Hush, just hold on tight," she ordered, clutching her children's hands as they huddled together. In that suffocating blackness, the whispered words grew louder, reverberating through Jenna's mind like a relentless chant. "You must confront your choices." "Mommy!" her youngest cried, his voice breaking.
"Hold on, just hold on," she urged, feeling the pulse of her heart thundering, drowning out the whispers, the laughter, and the chilling sounds surrounding them. She needed to think. She couldn't panic. Suddenly, a searing flash illuminated the room, revealing the grotesque child face to face with them, eyes glimmering with unshed tears and malice. "Will you take my place?" Without thinking, Jenna reacted. "No," she shouted, shielding her kids. But as the shadows inched closer, she could feel the weight of her choices, the burden of her secrets pressing down on her. What sacrifice would this child require? "Mommy, I don't want to stay here," her eldest whined, tugging at her arm in desperation. "Then we need to leave." Jenna felt the urgency pulse through her. "Follow me." As they bolted for the door, a blinding flash filled the room once more. Jenna blinked, and in that fleeting moment, a horrifying revelation hit her like a slap. The walls seemed to whisper her own sins back to her, drawing strength from her fears. What if it's not just the past coming for us?" she gasped, stumbling into the doorway. Before she could process the thought, the candle flickered back to life, illuminating the entire room, and in that light stood a figure, an adult Jenna, but hollowed out, eyes wide with despair, the same twisted smile she had seen in the reflection. "Choose," it repeated, menacingly. Jenna's heart dropped. The echoes of her past seemed to merge with her present, creating a horrifying reality from which it felt impossible to escape. "What will I sacrifice?" she whispered, feeling the cold creep back in. The figure grinned wider, and the laughter began anew, twisted and mocking, swallowing the light. What choice would Jenna make as the darkness closed in again? What sacrifices demanded from her, and at what price? Jenna felt her breath hitch in her throat as the figure before her twisted even further, its smile stretching unnaturally wide, revealing teeth too sharp to belong to a human. The mocking laughter echoed around her, seeping into her bones, as if the very air was poisoned by the past she had tried so hard to escape. "Mommy, I'm scared," her youngest sobbed, pulling at her skirt more insistently now. The candle flickered again, casting eerie shadows that twisted and turned with every beat of flickering light. "Listen to me," Jenna said, her voice rising with urgency as panic clawed at her from every corner. "We have to go, back the way we came." But as she turned, the doorway that had just moments ago appeared as their escape now gaped like a dark maw, the wood warped and splintered as if it had been gnawed on by some ancient beast. No light spilled through, no way out. "No," she whispered, incredulity creeping into her voice. The twisted version of herself stepped closer, its eyes like burnt-out stars, cold and absent. "Why would you want to leave?" it hissed, each word dripping with disdain. Jenna's heart dropped. The echoes of her past seemed to merge with her present, creating a horrifying reality from which it felt impossible to escape. "What will I sacrifice?" she whispered, feeling the cold creep back in. The figure grinned wider, and the laughter began anew, twisted and mocking, swallowing the light. What choice would Jenna make as the darkness closed in again? What sacrifices demanded from her, and at what price? Jenna felt her breath hitch in her throat as the figure before her twisted even further, its smile stretching unnaturally wide, revealing teeth too sharp to belong to a human. The mocking laughter echoed around her, seeping into her bones, as if the very air was poisoned by the past she had tried so hard to escape. "Mommy, I'm scared," her youngest sobbed, pulling at her skirt more insistently now. The candle flickered again, casting eerie shadows that twisted and turned with every beat of flickering light. "Listen to me," Jenna said, her voice rising with urgency as panic clawed at her from every corner. "We have to go, back the way we came." But as she turned, the doorway that had just moments ago appeared as their escape now gaped like a dark maw. The wood warped and splintered as if it had been gnawed on by some ancient beast. No light spilled through, no way out. "No," she whispered, incredulity creeping into her voice. The twisted version of herself stepped closer, its eyes like burnt-out stars, cold and absent. "Why would you want to leave?" it hissed, each word dripping with disdain. "You can't run from what you are." "What are you?" Jenna demanded, trying to hold back the surge of fear. "I am your past, your choices, your failures." Each word felt like a dagger, striking true, forcing Jenna to confront the memories she had buried deep. The mistakes, the promises broken, the things done in desperate times that clawed at her in the dark. The shadows around them began to pulse, creeping closer and closing in on her. "They've come for you," the figure taunted, its grin deepening into a grotesque mask of cruelty. Jenna had to think clearly. "What do you want?" she yelled against the pressing dread, clutching her children tightly to her, their small bodies trembling against her. But the dark specter merely laughed, a sound hollow and echoing. "You already know the answer. Sacrifice. What will you give to save them?" In that moment, Jenna could see flickers of past choices splintering before her, faces haunting her, friends lost, moments wasted, the screaming accusations of her own mind. The weight of her decisions hung like a heavy fog. "No!" she cried, pushing the thought back. "I won't let you take them." Yet the shadows surged forward, whispering, reminding her of every regret, every sorrow that had shaped her life. "Join us," they whispered. "Become part of the darkness." "No!" With a burst of defiance, she turned away, gripping her children's hands tightly. "Stay close, we're getting out of here." But as she pulled them toward what she prayed would be an escape, she felt a tug at her heart, a sickening feeling that to save them she might have to betray the very things she loved. As they reached the door again, it swung open, revealing not the hallway they had fled down, but a staircase leading into even darker depths. The sensation of dread wrapped its icy fingers around her throat. "Go," she urged, though her voice quaked. Stepping forward, the darkness seemed to lurch and twist, welcoming them with open, shadowy arms. "Mommy!" the boys cried, huddling closer. Panic flooded Jenna as she felt the temperature around them drop, breath turning to mist. They hesitated, straddled between light and darkness. What will you sacrifice to keep them safe? The question curled around them, heavy with implications. Just then, a piercing scream echoed from the staircase, chilling her to the core. The laughter followed, mocking and relentless. Behind her, the twisted version of her grin widened, now gaping with savage delight. "Make your choice before time runs out." Terror flared in her eyes. What was the cost of freedom? With only an instant to decide, her heart raced.
Could she truly face her past, or would she lose everything? The shadows drew closer. Jenna knew it was now or never. Would she stand her ground or flee into the unknown? "Not without my children!" she screamed defiantly, her voice slicing through the chilling air. But as they stood poised at the edge of choice, Jenna realized something even more horrifying. What if the darkness was already inside her? And with that realization, the very walls seemed to thrum with impending dread, as if they too were holding their breath for what would come next. Would Jenna be able to reclaim her family, or would she be consumed by the very shadows she tried to outrun? The shadows pulsed like a living entity, a mass of writhing black that twisted around Jenna as if trying to suffocate her resolve. The air crackled with a tangible energy of dread. The echo of that piercing scream still lingered, a reminder that time was not on her side. She could sense the darkness reaching out, for her children. "Mommy, please," her youngest sobbed, his grip tightening around her fingers. His wide eyes darted around, pupils pinpricks of fear. Jenna bit her lip. She couldn't afford to show weakness. "Hold on to me," she urged, almost pleading, dragging them backward toward the staircase that seemed to breathe heavily. It loomed before them, a gaping hole that promised nothing but despair, yet it felt like their only option. The dark specter followed, its cruel laughter ringing in her ears. "You think that you can escape? This is where you belong, Jenna. You can't outrun yourself." The words shattered the illusion of safety she clung to. Memories surged unbidden. A flash of her childhood, nestled in the safety of her mother's embrace. That memory splintered into fragments of arguments, of pain. The spectral figure seemed to revel in this. "What did you sacrifice then? Was it worth it?" "No!" Jenna shouted, her voice strong, though her heart quaked. She felt the heat of her shame, of her mistakes like branding iron on her flesh, forcing her back down. "I won't let you do this!" Yet the shadows thickened like fog, wrapping around her ankles, sticky and cold, as if they meant to pull her down, to drain her strength. They whispered promises of acceptance, of understanding. "You know what needs to happen. Just give in." Jenna's breath quickened. The world narrowed to the three of them, the biting cold of the shadows and the unrelenting pressure of the presence closing in. She felt it inside her, a shadow of despair whispering. It fed on her insecurities, the choices that had propelled her here. "Mommy, please, we can't stay." The desperation in her child's voice was a lifeline. Jenna clung to it, wrapping herself in it like a shield. "I'm not giving you up," she screamed, the words tearing from her throat as she pushed forward, her feet striking against the hard, unseen stairs. The shadows screamed back, angry, desperate. It was a cacophony of lost souls, clawing for release. Suddenly, a hand shot out of the darkness, skeletal and claw-like, grasping for her children. Jenna's heart nearly stopped. "No!" She stumbled backward, but the pull was relentless. As if sensing her fear, the spectral figure's smile grew wider, mocking her. "You love them, don't you? But what love is enough? Will you sacrifice enough to keep them from me?" "Stop!" she shouted, heart racing. She realized the twisted creature offered a choice that felt wrong, yet inescapable. "You don't get to decide what I give." The shadows surged, tightening around her, but deep within, something ignited, a flicker of defiance. "You have no power over me. I am more than my past." Just as she felt the weight begin to lift, her eldest screamed. Jenna whipped around, panic slicing through her. There, the darkness had truly ensnared her son, pulling him into its grasp, his small hands outstretched, terror in his eyes. In that moment, Jenna pivoted, instincts roaring to life. "Get away from him!" she bellowed, charging forward, a desperate mother's strength surging through her. But before she could reach him, the shadows pulled tighter. Time slowed as she watched, helpless. Would she break their bond, take a step into the abyss to save the ones she loved? "Mommy!" he cried again, and she felt every ounce of her being shatter. "Hold on!" she shouted, lunging forward, adrenaline coursing through her veins. It was a leap into darkness, not knowing if she would fall or fight. And in that second, as she reached for the child she might be able to save, a pulse reverberated through the air around her, an ancient force awakening, a rush that promised destruction or salvation. But as she reached the brink of the nightmare, she felt a sudden jolt. Something unseen gripped her heart, squeezing tight. What was the true sacrifice? Would it be the love of a mother, or something much darker? As the shadows roiled and twisted, Jenna realized she had just crossed a line. The looming darkness smiled, and she could almost hear the echoes of her children's pleas, fused with the whispers of her failures, all rising to a crescendo. Choose before it's too late. And with that, the staircase groaned beneath their weight, the air charged with the sinister promise of dread. What awaited them at the bottom threatened to unravel everything Jenna believed about love, sacrifice, and the depth of her own darkness. What awaited her was a choice that could change everything, or end it all. Jenna pushed forward, muscles burning as she lunged into the shadows. She felt the darkness rippling around her, cold tendrils tangling around her wrists, yanking her back. Panic surged like a tidal wave. It wrapped tight, squeezing the breath from her lungs as she felt the pull towards her son becoming stronger. She had to save him. "Stop! Let him go!" Her voice trembled, blending with the dark laughter surrounding them. But the shadows only thickened, mocking her cries with whispers that slithered into her mind. "You think your love can break us? Your weakness feeds our power," the entity hissed, each word dripping with malice. "You are nothing without your burdens." "Leave my children out of this!" Her resolve faltered, but ignited by a fierce anger. The warmth of her children's hands reminded her of their love. That flicker of hope was the brightest light bursting through the black. Suddenly, the shadows writhed as more hands emerged, dozens wrapping around her, clamoring for her, reaching for her insecurities. Jenna struggled against the onslaught, and her heart raced. For the first time, she felt the tide break. She wasn't just a mother, she was more than this darkness. "Mommy, I can't hold on," her eldest cried, fear radiating from his small frame. Tears streamed down his cheeks, and Jenna's heart shattered as she beheld his terrified eyes. "Don't let go, I'm coming," she yelled, desperation pulling her forward. Just inches away now, she felt the shadows clenching tighter, threatening to consume them all. Then, as if on cue, a cool breeze swept through, cutting through the thick air, and the whispers began to ebb. Just a heartbeat, a moment of clarity in the storm. Was this the universe opening a door, a split second to seize what was truly hers? In that essential moment, Jenna remembered her own worth. She wrenched her other hand free from the icy grip that held it and pointed at the entity. "You're a lie! You don't own me!" The shadows recoiled, hissing like wounded animals. Drawing on every ounce of strength, she tore through the darkness towards her son. "I will save you! Hold on, baby!" The weight around them lightened, shifting just enough for them to move, to act. The darkness hissed, anger sharpening its voice. "You cannot escape! This will be your ruin!" The ground trembled beneath Jenna's feet. The staircase protested, cracks splitting the wood, threatening to take them both. Jenna gritted her teeth. She lunged for her child, arms outstretched. His hands grazed hers, and shock waves surged through her body. With raw instinct, she pulled him close, feeling his warmth ignite a spark amidst the freezing grip of shadows. "Got you," she gasped as she gathered both children into her arms, feeling relief wash over her for one fleeting moment. But the shadows writhed in fury, coiling around her legs, dragging at her feet. She staggered, the darkness roaring back with a vengeance. Rage surged from deep within, an explosion ignited by her love for her children. "I will not be your puppet." With a primal scream, fueled by defiance, she thrust her will outward, a wave of brilliance crashing upon the dark. Light erupted from her chest, illuminating the space and pushing against the dark figure that loomed threateningly. "Choose, Jenna, your light or your darkness." Suddenly, the shadows hesitated, the flicking lights illuminating the staircase ahead, revealing a path shrouded in treachery. In that moment of vulnerability, Jenna could see a glimmer of the bottom step, a way out, if she could just break the hold on her. "Mommy," her youngest whispered, voice trembling. Would she take that leap?
The truth was laid bare before her. What do I truly sacrifice? Before she could decide, a blinding flash engulfed them, and darkness roared as it lost its grip, swirling chaotically, twisting and bending. The children cried out, holding tight as the world around them began to shift, reshape. With one last glance into the abyss that had claimed so much of her soul, Jenna knew she might be plunging head first into something even darker. And as the light and darkness collided, a scream of unfathomable rage resonated. The shadows could morph, but would she succeed in saving her children from an even deeper horror? "Mommy, I can't see," they cried, struggling as the pulse of far-off thunder rolled, reverberating around them. Jenna tightened her grip, heart pounding. The tangle of shadows writhed, fighting back like a wounded animal, and her breathing quickened. This was no longer just about survival. It was a fight for everything she loved, and she would plunge ahead. But into what? As all shifted before her, she took one last breath, stepping toward the light, wondering if the shadows would be waiting at the end, or a whole new terror would emerge. The world twisted around Jenna, colors bleeding into one another as if reality was being pressed through a sieve. Each heartbeat felt like thunder, echoing within her chest, drowning out the chaotic cries of her children. The pull of darkness still tugged at her, but she was moving, or was she being dragged? Suddenly, they tumbled into a space that was not light, not dark, just empty. Jenna staggered, a wave of nausea sweeping over her. Her children were still clinging to her, their small bodies trembling, and she instinctively tightened her hold. "I'm right here," she soothed, forcing her voice to remain steady, though panic clawed at her throat. "Mommy, where are we?" her eldest whimpered, eyes wide in disbelief, scanning the void around them. I don't know," Jenna admitted, dread pooling in her stomach. The silence here felt different. It held a weight, as though every breath drew the shadows closer, waiting for their moment. Just then, whispers slithered into her thoughts, taunting echoes spun from the darkness. "You think you've escaped. This realm belongs to us. It is here you will learn the true price of love." With each syllable, panic shot through Jenna like ice. The connection to her children was a flickering thread, the kind that could snap at any moment. She couldn't let that happen. "Stay close," she urged, adrenaline surging. Before her, a shimmer caught her eye, a doorway, hazy and half-formed. Jenna darted toward it, each step heavier than the last, her heart racing as foul laughter flitted behind her, teasing her resolve. The whispers grew closer, more assertive, and she could almost decipher their words. "You're merely delaying the inevitable. You'll never escape what you truly are." Jenna faltered. Was this her? The shadow's words burrowed deep, echoing her own doubts. She pressed forward anyway, fighting against despair with every ounce of will. "Mommy, help!" her youngest cried, breaking her trance. A tendril of shadow had snaked around the boy's ankle, yanking him back. Jenna spun, her heart exploding in her chest. "No!" She dove toward him, grabbing his outstretched hand just in time. But the darkness was relentless, clawing at her flesh, burning with cold rage. A scream rang out, raw and primal. That wasn't just from her, was it? "Stop! Get away from him!" she shouted defiantly. The air chilled as she felt the shadows drawing back, hissing like trapped animals. "You don't have control over me." In that moment of ferocity, Jenna felt a surge within herself, a flicker she feared was extinguishing. The essence of love and resilience blazed. "We're getting out of here!" Thrusting through the pain, she wrenched her son free. The entity howled in fury, shadowy figures slashing at her, fangs bared. They surged through the doorway. Jenna rushed her children ahead, momentum carrying them across the threshold. As they crossed, the shadows recoiled, a wave of darkness slamming into the doorway, a desperate, final attempt to reclaim what it lost. Jenna's body trembled as they landed, disoriented. The air smelled different. It felt warm, not the stifling cold of despair, but the remnants of hope. "Are we safe?" her eldest asked, a note of fear creeping into his voice. Jenna blinked, trying to absorb their new surroundings. They stood inside an old house. Wood creaked underfoot, dust danced in the muted glow of a solitary light. But something was wrong. Shadows still lingered at the edges of this room, whispering to one another. She thought she heard her name whispered, a chilling caress in the thin air. "Keep your eyes on me," she instructed tightly, inching backward, sweat prickling her skin. The creeping darkness slithered closer. "Mommy," her youngest whimpered, and Jenna turned, finding fear etched into her child's features. "Don't look back," she insisted, pulling them toward a door on the other side of the room. Deeper into the house? Was it a fortress or a trap? But then she heard it, the sound of footsteps, quick and sharp, behind them. And they were not alone. "Jenna?" The voice echoed, soft yet commanding, filled with tangible malice. "You can't escape forever." In that instant, the shadow surged forward, closing the gap. Jenna's heart raced as she flung the door open. What lay ahead was another uncertainty, another trial. But she couldn't stop. It was now or never. "Run!" she shouted, and in that breathless moment, she shoved her children through the doorway, immediately followed by the rushing shadows. As they plunged into the unknown once more, Jenna realized this was just the beginning. Would they find safety, or would darkness follow them relentlessly? Desperation tightened around her heart like a noose. The house seemed to stretch infinitely, corridors spiraling deeper into the abyss. And in the distance, she felt it, a familiar, haunting laughter echoing through the halls. What awaited them in this endless expanse? Would they find a way out, or only further into the darkness? Jenna pushed her way through the doorway, heart hammering in her chest like a war drum, her children clinging to her in a vice grip. The shadows chased them, whispering promises of despair that slithered around her ankles. But this time, she wasn't going to let them win. "Stay close, don't look back," she shouted.
the urgency of her voice cutting through the thick, oppressive air. Each step echoed as they traversed a long, dimly lit corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly, walls adorned with family portraits, eyes watching their every move, heavy with sorrow. "Where are we?" her eldest asked, fear threading his voice. "I don't know, but we'll find a way out." She couldn't afford to show doubt, though inside, uncertainty gnawed at her like a hungry beast. But still, she pressed forward, each footfall ringing with fierce determination. They weren't just searching for an exit, they were fighting for their lives. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the corridor as a door swung open violently behind them, spewing shadows like an overfilled pot boiling over. Panic surged as Jenna whipped around, facing the oncoming tide of darkness, instincts battling against her paralyzing fear. "Run!" she urged, pushing her children further down the hall as the shadows lunged at them, grasping for their tiny forms. The figures dissolved back into the walls, hungry whispers drifting along the air. Letting adrenaline take over, she surged forward, hand clenching around the old banister of a staircase that spiraled downward. This way! It felt like a leap of faith, one final gamble in the dark. As they descended into the darkness, the whispers turned into deafening cries. "You're trapped! You belong to us, Jenna!" But love burned vigorously within her, a bright ember overshadowing the malevolence surrounding them. She would not let her past or the shadows dictate her fate. At the bottom of the staircase, the air shifted. It was heavier, laden with an ominous silence that felt like a prelude to something catastrophic. Holding her breath, Jenna peered through the doorway ahead, revealing a room filled with dusty relics, curiosities and trinkets piled haphazardly on rickety shelves. Creepy laughter echoed from the shadows. "What is this place?" her youngest whimpered, eyes wide. This is where everything began," Jenna said, her voice barely audible, feelings of dread filtering in as memories she had tried so hard to escape slammed into her. Suddenly, a chilling whisper rippled through the room, beckoning her. "Face the truth, and all will be revealed." "Mommy, I'm scared." Her eldest clutched her tighter. Jenna surveyed the room full of memories that loomed like ghosts. Decorated photo albums depicting smiles frozen in time, showcasing laughter and innocence long lost. But it was one dusty photo at the back that drew her in. She stepped forward, compelled. "Remember," the voice resounded like thunder, "you cannot escape the choices you have made." Jenna's blood ran cold as she stared at the image. A family gathered, vibrant and warm. And there, frozen at the edge of the photo, stood a version of her husband. But something was wrong. An uneasy look danced in his eyes. And behind him lurked a shadow, crawling closer. The memory screamed to be unearthed, but she couldn't, not yet. "No, I won't give in," Jenna yelled defiantly, as shadows slithered toward her, intent on reclaiming her resolve. "Not while I have my children!" Launching herself into the room, the shadows recoiled, screeching in pain. The memories pulsed, crackling with anger, forming into an entity molded from her past, taking shape like a nightmarish reflection of her own fears. "Will you save your children at any cost?" it taunted, eyes burning like coal. "Or will you let them be consumed by the cycle?" "No, I won't lose them," she shouted, lunging forward, heart racing, chasing the echo of her husband's laughter that now felt like a heavy weight on her chest. In that moment, the figure transformed again, flickering out, revealing her husband, a shadow of his former self. His voice resonated deeply, filled with despair. "Jenna, you have to choose. break the chains, or surrender. What do I have to do? She fought against the surge of emotion gripping her, threatening to pull her under. He paused, shadows swirling around him, eyes filled with something she recognized, love interplayed with grief. You must confront the truth of what ties our family to these shadows. Jenna's breath hitched. It was the moment of reckoning. She had to confront the very blood that coursed through her veins. Could she tear open the scars within? Face the darkness, Jenna. Her husband's voice rang out, surrounding her like a protective shield. You will find your strength. With a deep breath, she summoned her courage, gripping her children's small hands. This stops now, Jenna declared, stepping forward into the radiant shadow. The darkness shrieked and swirled, echoing like a tempest, wrapping around her until she felt it dissolve into a rush of white light. Warmth spread through her like a bomb, illuminating her surroundings, dispelling the night. The shattering of the curse pulsed through her like wildfire, shock waves ripping through the gloomy landscape as shadows melted away. In that blinding light, Jenna whispered, "I choose love." With that proclamation, the heavy weight lifted. She saw her husband standing proudly before her, a fragile hope shining in his expression.
The shadows faded into nothingness, the room transforming into a sun-drenched living space that felt like a sanctuary, a true home at last. Jenna's heart swelled as her children squeezed her hands tighter, confusion and fear slowly melting away, replaced by serenity and trust. "We did it, Mommy," her eldest beamed. "Yes," she replied, confidence swelling as the past finally released its grip. Together, they had forged a path into the light, and with her husband by her side, all the chaos faded into memories, a very different kind of shadow. As they stepped forward into this new dawn, Jenna felt love and hope intertwining effortlessly. The family curse was broken, and a fresh start awaited, a life where laughter would replace screams and warmth would replace shadows. And as Jenna held her children close, she knew they would never fall prey again. In unity, they had confronted the darkness together and emerged stronger, embracing the beauty of the life ahead. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and keep these tales alive. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories. I'm counting on true fans to share their thoughts about this conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything. Let's spread the word.